Hello and welcome. It is Wednesday, and I am very excited to have my good friend Lauren Enders joining us today to catch us up on what's new and what's next in the AAC world. So let's bring Lauren on. Good morning, Lauren. Good afternoon. How are you?
Yep, I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Where exactly are you located?
I am in eastern Pennsylvania, about 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia, in Bucks
Oh,
County.
very cool. And so you go to the Ashes that are on the East Coast, correct?
I do.
Very cool. Well, Lauren and we've known each other for a number of years, and I'm really excited because we also found out that we were in the same sorority, Phi Sigma Sigma. I was at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and Lauren was at,
University of Delaware.
yes, so very cool.
Years ago.
So just a couple years, we're not that old.
Okay,
So, Lauren, can you give us a little bit of history on how you got involved with AAC?
sure. I did my master's in speech and language pathology at the University of Pittsburgh, and I graduated with my master's in 1995. And while I was there, I was super lucky to have, I went in thinking that I wanted to work with adults who had strokes or, other kinds of adults, either inpatient or outpatient. And I came out having had a bunch of practica. I got to work with students in a typical school and students in a center-based school who used all kinds of assistive technology. And what I came out learning was that what I really wanted to do was work with kids with complex needs. So really, since the point of not even graduation in my master's program, I knew that that was where I kind of wanted to go, and that assistive technology was something that I loved. So my first job, I asked for a caseload that had kids with physical disabilities, and then it kind of has grown from there, and I eventually became part-time SLP, part-time staff developer, where I was presenting, and then I've been in a full-time assistive technology consultant with an emphasis on augmentative communication for since 2008.
Now, back then, the 2000s, AAC was much different, very no tech, and then gradually getting into low tech. How did you continue to stay abreast of all the technology?
I have been, it's difficult because it's not something that really kind of lands in your lap. And it's still not, it's a little bit better. But I have just been seeking out, any kind of training that I could go to. If I ever heard that someone was coming and doing a presentation, I was there. Making connections with, even back then, device companies, PRC, Tobii Dynavox, the ones that were in the forefront. Then I made sure that I knew the reps and I learned from them. So it's been an interesting, kind of development of the way that AAC has become much more in the mainstream and much more known. But yeah, I distinctly remember all kinds of trainings on, the Liberator and the
Oh, yeah.
Delta Talker and, the old original Dynavox. So it's been a journey, but it's really cool to see where things are going and how sophisticated the technology is really getting.
Right. So it's twofold too. So you have the tech, but then you also have the language systems. So how have you kept abreast of all of the different language systems that have come out?
I really just spend a lot of time. I could probably answer almost anything you ask with social media.
Yeah.
Social media has been, for my professional life and my career, has been just a complete game changer. It has, so with social media, I've been able to kind of make connections with people in the field, from a variety of different areas across the country, across the world, people using different products, as well as vendors and developers and companies. So it's really just by constantly trying to stay on top of things. And one of the reasons that I think I'm pretty good at staying on top of things is that I have this intense desire to share current resources. So, and I do that on all my, on my professional Facebook and my Pinterest and things like that, Twitter a little bit. But that desire to share best practices and resources makes me continue to constantly seek out new information, whether it be language systems or devices or whatever it is.
Absolutely. Well, you've been an absolute leader in the online space. That's how you and I met. I think it was on Twitter, actually, when people were using it a lot. I know that we're still kind of, doing that with the hashtag SLPeeps, but I think everyone's moved over to Instagram.
Yeah, I'm kind of slow with the Instagram. I've got an account. I've posted a few things, but I gotta hop on that bandwagon a little better.
Yeah, me too. But that's how we met, and you started creating courses with us through Exceptional Ed, and you are one of the absolute leaders in the AAC space, and people love joining our lives with you, and then obviously taking your courses later. But the word that I always think of when I think of Learn Enders is gamification, and that is this integration of apps in and out of the whatever the language system that someone is using, or alongside of it. Can you share that a little bit with us?
Yeah, I think the reason that you probably associate me with apps and other fun things like that is that one of my biggest soapboxes is that for us to learn anything, there needs to be engagement. And in my all my time in the schools, what I've really noticed is that a lot of really, really, really well-meaning educators, therapists work really, really hard trying to teach language, trying to teach literacy, all kinds of things. But then there's a kind of some confusion about why it's not working or why it's not working fast enough. And from my vantage point, I think so often is that kids or clients are often bored stiff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I ended up. Often a slant in my presentations or things that I post about is finding ways to encourage practice language or literacy, emergent literacy, in ways that are fun and that can make a connection to that individual and what they're interested in, and actually help them develop their interests. And I'm also super techie, so initially I was really posting a lot about apps on Pinterest. I'm not quite as great at that anymore because there's too many things to do. But finding ways to use apps that people could easily access to keep kids engaged, and that's probably how I got my gamification tag in your mind.
You have a great tech reputation. Well, that's one of the reasons that I'm with Cognixion, the company that I am now working with. And it makes me think of these forward thinking tech usages like augmented reality. And you were one of the first people who started using those apps. And, I'd seen it out there. I'm like, what could I do with this? And all of a sudden there's Lauren going, look, this is how you can use it. This is exactly how I use it. And, I'm so proud of you. And I want to thank you
Oh,
for
thank
really
you.
leading us in this space. It's true because a lot of us would be like, oh yeah, I'm great with tech, but it's like within a certain box. Like this is how I use it. This is how this app is used. And then you had us thinking in new ways and continue to do that, bringing in a new app like the ones where you can put on different filters over your face. And here I am using it in a very limited way through Snapchat and sending it, to someone to be funny. And you're showing us how we can engage students and get language going. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I think part of it is just that I have I have a kind of a weird sense of humor. So I'm really willing to do kind of a lot and make a complete fool of myself in the interest of creating some sort of language and interaction that's fun.
Exactly. So there's a question here. This is a great one from Andreas, and let's show this. So Andreas is the CEO of Cognixion, and he has a good question for you. Are any AAC apps using game theory or fostering engagement really well that you know of?
I don't. I think in terms of AAC apps, I would say no. I think that the dedicated device company that's where we're seeing more integration of apps and things like that are built into language systems. But I can't think of a ton that's going on in terms of game theory that I'm seeing in our robust AAC apps that are currently available. And
We do
it's a
have.
thing, yeah, it's a tough thing to do as well because what we often share in in all kinds of spaces about when we're talking about using AAC apps, particularly on tablets. Most of us in the field are sharing, be very careful because you don't want to be using a game on the same device.
Right.
Because if any individual, my example is always, if you have on your iPhone, if you have two apps and one is Facebook and one is quantum physics, which one would you choose? In many, many cases, we suggest that the game is actually on a different device. And I think that's probably why we're not really seeing a lot built into the app, because the activity or the engaging task often needs to be outside of the device.
Right, right. In SpeakPros, we do have an area called the Academy, and it's
Cool.
working with a chat bot and having like social interactions, and there are acceptable and then non-acceptable or not appropriate type of responses, and it rewards you by giving you another question, and so that's a really positive way to do it, and there isn't like this positive negative, rewarding on there. So I'm sure that a lot of clinical applications, they naturally lend themselves to that. So, once we can do that within a comfortable and safe space, then people can do it independently. And that's really it's a great opportunity. So
Cool.
let me bring you to what we've started this series for, and that's to find out what's new, what's next in AAC. And very specifically, Lauren, with all of the things that have been going on these days, what do you see that is new in the AAC space?
I think that what's new is pretty obvious. What's new is a move to teletherapy, distance learning. Having been, most of us been quarantined, many of us for 3 months, we've all had to learn and quickly learn new ways of providing support, of interacting with others, of working with others. And that certainly has been the case with providing implementation for AAC, whether it be through therapies, or whether it be through distance learning for school. But I think what's new is the explosion in how to use distance learning and teletherapy. And then some of the realizations that there are some really good things that have come out of teletherapy, especially in terms of connecting with families.
Yes.
I think there are some elements of teletherapy and distance learning that will probably not go away because they've been found to be so effective in really supporting families at a whole new level.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's definitely where you and other AAC leaders have been talking about the coaching model and model. And now we're finally getting our chance to get right to the people that we want to hear that and be able to compound our clinical practice. So thank you for all that you've been doing to help to pave that way. All right. So what is next? What do you see for the future, either in terms of technology, clinical practice, or other forward-thinking ideas?
Well, I think what's next, I think there's going to continue to be kind of a honing of how to provide support in the teletherapy and distance learning space. We're still really new to this. And everybody, a lot of the time has been taken to learn the tools that can be used. You can use lesson picks with PowerPoint, and you can use green screen in Zoom, and you can, and everybody has really had to very quickly learn all these new platforms and new tools and new ways of doing things. But if you think about it, 3 months is a pretty short amount of time. So I think that what's next is going to be a continued learning and honing process, and really figuring out how to do even better in terms of providing implementation support, providing therapy, and also providing support to families and caregivers. And then, but of course, not everything is wrapped around teletherapy and distance learning. We will be at some point going back to, more in-person kinds of supports. And I think it'll be forever changed. But I think that those will obviously, that we're going to come back to that. And so then that brings us, well, what else is next? I think that technology as it forges forward is a big part of what's next. I think that things like brain computer interface, we're going to see a lot from that in the future. I think just continued developments in apps and dedicated systems. I'm wondering if we're going to see we've seen device companies and app companies come out with whole new kind of support offerings where they're doing, virtual assessments, and they're providing all kinds of. So I think that we're going to see perhaps a shift in some new features and new offerings from the companies that are creating our AAC apps and our AAC devices. So I think that there's probably a lot next, but continued growth in the distance learning and teletherapy, and continued growth in both the technology and the supports that technology companies are providing. I think those would probably be three big ones in my mind.
Excellent. Well, I'm very excited to be in this space. I love that you mentioned brain computer interface. I actually didn't know what that was before March when I started with Cognixion. And this has been a wild ride for me to really learn what's possible out there. So thank you, Lauren. Thanks for joining us and for sharing. And it's so good to see you. And we will definitely keep watching out for all of the great resource things you're sharing with us.
Okay, I'll keep sharing.
Thank you.
All right,
okay,
take
bye-bye.
care.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us, and wanted to let you know, whoops, there's my puppy coughing, sorry. Wanted to let you know that today's AAC What's New, What's Next episode has been brought to you by the Speak Pros app, offering an intuitive interface that allows people to express themselves using swipes, taps, gestures, and eye tracking technology. Find out more at speakpros.com or contact me directly for a demo and to get professional access to Speak Pros Pro Plus with eye tracking technology on the iPad. Thanks so much, everyone. I'll see you next Wednesday.